Hello and welcome to Eastern Media News. My name is Shmelis Mariasaga Bramikal. Eastern Media is a multilingual channel providing major developments and stories in the Horn of Africa and from around the globe. Please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe our channel. In our news edition today, we'll be looking into the following major topics. The Norwegian Refugee Council, NRC, says aid is still not reaching Tigray. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs Demeke Mekonnen says Ethiopia is committed to address outstanding refugee issues in the country. Meanwhile, UN says 20,000 refugees missing after Ethiopian camps destroyed. Tigray opposition parties assert 50,000 plus civilian death. Concerns and grievances are witnessed as big rallies were conducted in support of Prime Minister Abiy and his party, Prosperity Party. Let's now look into the news in detail. The Norwegian Refugee Council, NRC, says aid is still not reaching Tigray. 12 weeks since the start of the conflict in Ethiopia's Tigray region, meaningful humanitarian operations have still not begun. Aid organizations are unable to reach the central and western parts of the region. The two refugee camps are completely inaccessible. In the few instances where agencies are accessible to the region, it is still limited to areas along major roads or the capital, Mekelle. Aid workers face an unpredictable approval process with blurred lines of authorizations, as well as unclear and shifting approval procedures. Reacting to the persistent humanitarian access challenge into Tigray, Secretary General of the Norwegian Refugee Council, NRC, Jan Egeland, said. Reacting to the persistent humanitarian access challenge into Tigray, Secretary General of the Norwegian Refugee Council, NRC, Jan Egeland, said, "In all my years as an aid worker, I have rarely seen a humanitarian response so impeded and unable to deliver in response for so long to so many with such pressing needs. As an international community, we are clearly failing to deliver against the humanitarian imperative we are facing." The Secretary General added that it is false to say that aid is increasingly getting through, as it has only gone to the places with little conflict and more limited needs. Millions of women, children, and men, including refugees, are in a truly desperate situation, suffering alone without aid or protection. Jan Egeland also strongly urges all authorities to do whatever it takes to enable unpredicted and unconditional access to those most in need, regardless of their locations. Deputy Prime Minister says Ethiopia committed to address outstanding issues related to refugees. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs Demeke Mekonnen said the government of Ethiopia is fully committed to address the outstanding issues related to refugees alongside the rehabilitation and reconstruction activities in Tigray. According to Ethiopian news agency, Demeke made the remark following his discussion with UN High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, Filippo Grandi. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, for his part, noted that the discussion focused on the humanitarian situation in Tigray and on how to accelerate efforts to reach the people in need of humanitarian assistance. According to Grandi, the objective of his visit to Ethiopia is to discuss on how to resolve a challenge related to refugees. Meanwhile, Bloomberg quoted the United Nations as saying that well about 20,000 refugees are missing in Ethiopia's war-torn Tigray region. According to this news report, the refugees, most of whom are from neighboring Eritrea, fled from the Hitsats and Shimelaba shelters which were destroyed in fighting that erupted in Tigray in November. In January, satellite image showed the destruction of 2 refugee camps sheltering thousands of Eritreans in the region. The report added that about 3,000 people made it to another camp in Mai Aini, which the United Nations has access to, according to Filippo Grandi, the UN's High Commissioner for Refugees. Many refugees were caught in crossfire, abducted and forced to return to Eritrea under duress by Eritrean forces, Grandi said, citing testimony presented to him at a visit to the camp while on a 4-day trip for meetings with officials in Ethiopia. According to this report, Ethiopian federal troops entered Tigray in response to an alleged attack on November 4 and toppled a dissident ruling party that is said to itself in opposition to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed since he came to power in April 2018. Though the government announced a victory on November 28, 2020, the region's leader has vowed to continue with the conflict that has displaced hundreds of thousands, killed thousands, and threatened to destabilize the Horn of Africa. The situation in Tigray is extremely grave and urgent support is necessary to prevent the situation worsening, Grandi said. Our main priority is to gain access to deliver aid and protection. Communications in the region remain impeded by the government shutdown of telecommunications networks. Relief agencies, including the International Committee of the Red Cross, have said they are unable to access areas outside major towns and rural areas to deliver humanitarian aid. It is also indicated in the report that the U.S. has called for an investigation into reports of looting, sexual violence, and assaults in refugee camps, as experts warned the window of opportunity to gather evidence is quickly closing. Tigray opposition parties assert 50,000 plus civilians dead. A trio of opposition parties in Ethiopia's embattled Tigray region estimates that more than 50,000 civilians have been killed in a 3-month conflict. They urge the international community to intervene before a humanitarian disaster of biblical proportion will become a gruesome reality. The statement posted Tuesday does not say where the estimate came from, and the parties could not immediately be reached. Communication links remain challenging in much of the region, making it difficult to verify claims by any side. The opposition parties say the international community should ensure the immediate withdrawal of fighters, including soldiers from neighboring Eritrea, who witnesses say are supporting Ethiopian forces. The parties also urge an independent investigation into the conflict, dialogue, more humanitarian aid, and media access to cover what is happening. The opposition parties assert that the hunger is man-made, as cattle have been killed and raided, crops burned, and homes looted and destroyed. A statement was signed by the Tigray Independence Party, the National Congress of Great Tigray, and Salsai Weyane Tigray. Their statement accuses Ethiopia's government of using hunger as a weapon to subdue Tigray since it has been obstructing international efforts for humanitarian assistance. Ethiopia's government, however, has asserted that aid is being delivered and nearly 1.5 million people have been reached. The Tigray region hosted 96,000 refugees from Eritrea before the fighting, and Grandi said he had spoken to some who were caught in the crossfire and then resorted to eating leaves after being cut off from support for several weeks. Others were forcibly returned to Eritrea by Eritrean forces, he said. It was not clear how many. Grandi said up to 20,000 of the refugees have been dispersed into areas where humanitarian workers don't have access. The UN refugee chief also called for an independent, transparent investigation into alleged abuses. The situation is very complex, he said. There has been a lot of crossfire, a lot of violation on all sides, including Tigray allied fighters. Pressure continued Tuesday as Germany said Chancellor Angela Merkel, in a phone call with Abiy, underscored the significance of peaceful solution to the conflict in Tigray region and of humanitarian supplies to the people affected. Merkel added that humanitarian aid organizations and media must be granted free access. And finally, concerns and grievances are witnessed as big rallies were conducted in support of Dr. Abiy and his Prosperity Party. Rallies which attracted tens of thousands, if not millions, were conducted in 12 Oromia zones and 14 major cities of the Oromia regional state, the biggest regional state in Ethiopia. Some opposition parties are raising concern following the rallies conducted in major Oromia cities and in support of Dr. Abiy Ahmed and Prosperity Party. The concerns and grievances are because of the unfairness in allowing supporters of PP, while other opposition parties were denied these rights in the past despite their frequent requests. In addition, the gestures and messages portrayed in the rallies' condemnation of opposition parties angered some opposition party leaders and their supporters. National Movement of Amhara, NEMA, and Balderas for Genuine Democracy Party, aka Balderas, were categorized as threats to the country by the participants of the rally. It was widely observed that these parties were labeled as synonymous with the Tigray People's Revolutionary Front TPLF and what the government considers as the faction of the Oromo Liberation Front OLF Shani, which were already categorized as terrorist groups by Prosperity Party. They were openly condemned and stated that they are enemies to the nation and threats to the unity of the country. This has created anger among the supporters of opposition political parties. Following this incident, NEMA issued a press statement dooming the message. According to the head of the National Movement of Amhara, NEMA, Belete Molla, the gestures are clear indication of the unfair treatment of parties and groups in the country. The head also condemned the cataloging of his party alongside TPLF and the faction of OLF, aka OLF Shani. Prime Minister Abiy on his part tweeted regarding the rallies. After thanking the people who took part in the rally, Prime Minister Abiy noted these supports are a wake-up call for all officials in the country and the government. He said it helps everyone in charge to do their part in serving the public effectively and discharging the responsibilities effectively. Too many critics are pouring in following the rallies posed from the public and opposition parties in the country. Political critics are also saying that such moves are one of the techniques to deviate the public from the main agenda in the country: war, hunger, and threat of disintegration. Some analyses are also seen and describe the move as an unfair treatment of political parties in the country. Well, that brings us to the end of today's news. This has been Shimelis Meressa Gabra Mikhail. Thank you for watching and see you next time.